too. And then they turn around and appeal.
For your sake.
Oh, thanks.
You don't want to be next to me.
Yeah,
Why
you're
not
just-
just-
Um, 7:01, we'll call the meeting of Ways and Means Committee for April 20th to order. First item will be the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And would you take the roll call, please?
Commissioner Gilman.
Here.
Henschel.
Here.
Lemko.
Here.
Maxbauer.
Here.
Richardson.
Here.
Thomas.
Yep.
Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Fleece.
Present. Next item is the approval of the minutes of the March 16th meeting. Everybody had a chance to look them over?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the March 16th minutes as mailed.
Support.
You get that? Been moved and supported to approve the minutes as presented for March 16th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's unanimous. And Linda, would you read the rules for public comment?
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provisions of the Michigan Open Meetings Act as amended. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluded time needed to answer commissioners' questions. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. Chairperson may at his or her discretion extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak.
Thank you. Is there anybody wishing to speak at public comment? This is the first one of 2 public comments we have. Seeing none, we'll proceed. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
We approve the agenda.
Support. Been moved and supported. Been moved and supported to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's unanimous. I don't think we have any special orders of business tonight.
No,
do we?
sir.
Okay. And next item is the consent calendar. Would you read that, please?
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such request will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. All information, A, receive and file. 1, consumer price index information. B, approve. 1, 2011 remonumentation grant acceptance. 2, 2011 remonumentation program contract services and peer review member contracts. 3, appropriation requests. 4, materials purchased for lighting and energy efficiency improvement grant.
Is there any items that the public would like removed from the consent calendar? Commissioners, is there any item you'd like removed?
Number 2 and number 4 under approval, please.
Actually, number
B2 and B4.
Yeah, B as in boy.
7B2.
number 3, please. I'd like to discuss that.
We only got 2 left. Anybody else? Ross?
I would move to approve the consent calendar with the exception of items B, 2, 3, and 4.
Support.
Been moved and supported to approve the consent calendar with the exception of the items removed. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's unanimous. We'll put the ones that were pulled
Tell them that's supposed to be a roll call.
Let's see. Oh, I need a roll call vote on that.
Commissioner Henschel?
Yes.
Lemkool?
Yes.
Maxbauer?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Whitlock?
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman?
Yes.
Chairman Flees?
Yes. We'll move the ones that were removed to number 9, B, C, and D. Okay, next item on the agenda is personal property tax. Lori, would you like to come forward, please?
I wanted to update the board on the personal property discovery program to date and to answer any questions that you may have regarding the program.
Could we have your name and title,
Oh, I'm
please?
sorry. Lori Spencer, Equalization Director.
Thank you.
I wanted to distinguish really what a discovery program is a little bit for those that might not be real familiar with it. According to the International Association of Assessing Officers, discovery is the process whereby the assessor identifies all taxable property in the jurisdiction and ensures that it is included on the assessment roll, which was by law what the assessor is required to do in Michigan. The contract with tax management was approved by this county board on October 20th in 2011. A little bit about Tax Management Associates, that's frequently known as TMA. They're a reputable national firm. They do have an office in Brighton. They do almost exclusively personal property audits and discovery. They've been doing personal property discovery services in the state of Michigan since 2002, and they work with the Michigan Department of Treasury on a statewide audit program. They estimated going into this project that the total estimated revenue would be $842,720. That was, it appears we have just received our first 20 personal property statements from individual businesses, and if we were to project those, it appears we will exceed that by quite a little, but it's early in the process. What TMA was charged with doing was locating and recording all businesses in the county that had a statutory responsibility to file a personal property statement, but were not doing so, and what we used was our 2010 roll to determine that, if they were on the roll or whether they weren't on the roll. Discovered accounts, if they meet our contract guidelines, are paid a flat fee of $250 per account. There is a lower threshold of value, and that is equal to $2,000 SEV. So any account that comes in that is a reported, estimated, or assumed value below this threshold will not be processed by TMA and will not be a billable account to Grand Traverse County. If you look at TMA's history in Michigan in discoveries in other counties, they have averaged $32,185,697 per county. In Grand Traverse County, they have found 2,809 discovered accounts. Of those 2,809 accounts that they've discovered, they've processed 56 accounts. And the true cash value in those 56 accounts is $1,883,926. That leaves 2,753 accounts still to process. Not all of these discovered accounts obviously will meet contract specifications. TMA surveys the area using a variety of means. They attempt to reach all of the businesses that they have located by telephone. And then they mail out letters and personal property statements to those businesses that they have spoken to and that they have verified that they are indeed a business and operational. They also send out letters that they have not been able to contact by telephone or other means, either through the assessors or our office, where we're not quite sure who they are. If they find that a business is no longer at the physical address that they've identified, they do a canvass. One of the things that I wanted to note to the board that I've heard this frequently, and I may from you tonight, but there's no provision in the law for a differentiation between big and small businesses in Michigan. Michigan law provides that a person or entity receiving the personal property statement must complete it and return it to the assessor by the due date, even if they have no personal property to report. And one of the reasons for this is that one of the questions on a personal property statement, if any of you have ever looked at one, is do you have at your location other people that might have equipment that you're leasing from? As I'd indicated, we've received our first 20 personal property statements that have been filed from businesses. Those 20 statements will be reviewed with the local unit's assessor. This process will continue with approximately 50 to 75 statements arriving bi-weekly, and the process will be complete by June 10th. Fair taxation, and I've said this repeatedly, but I'm going to say it again, requires all taxpayers to be taxed on the same basis. Many businesses do comply, and obviously they're on our tax rolls, and we've had many that have not. Sometimes they're not aware of it. The other thing that I'd like to state is I know from my many conversations on the telephone and perhaps even with some of the commissioners that many people are not fans of the personal property tax. But one of the things that I feel should happen at that point is that those people that are not fans of the personal property tax should direct their attention to the legislature and not the office that's supposed to be maintaining the law. And making sure that our assessment rolls are fair and equitable. If you look at if you have the equalization report that I presented at our last meeting, you'll note that Grand Traverse County has $253,983,234 in assessed value in personal property. That represents 4.84% of your total taxable value. And revenue to the county is $1,265,804.64, just in county revenue, not counting all your other taxing authorities. In Van Buren County, that just completed this process a short time ago, they increased their taxable value 21% with the Discovery Program. I know those business owners that have not previously filed a personal property statement find it intimidating. It's small print. Our office is very happy to help anyone that is not sure how to fill out the statement. We're certainly happy to help anyone in that regard. So that's sort of where we are to date. If there are any questions regarding the program, I'd love to answer them if I could.
Jason?
You said they've identified 2,809 business accounts that weren't on the rolls already, or?
Yes.
Or that, okay, and then they've contacted those people already?
Yes, they've attempted to, yes.
Okay, so that's not necessarily, they may or may not be businesses at this point.
These are the ones that we've gotten down to that they either have verified or we've contacted the assessor to see whether they feel that they're in business. These are the ones that we have fairly well identified. What I said earlier is that some of them still might be accounts that are not going to be necessarily anything business asset. In
They're
other
not going
words,
to
they
meet
might
the threshold.
Right.
Okay. The 20 statements that you've received, those are people who have now filed and said, okay, sorry, we didn't know, and and they're writing checks.
Oh, no checks.
Or, okay, they're not writing checks, okay, but they're reporting it, and now you guys get to...
They're filling out their personal property statement.
Okay, do we have an idea of what the value of that is,
4 million.
of the 20?
I didn't separate out that value because we've been given a total value of the 56, and those 20 are part of the 56.
Okay. And that was
But that was
What was the value of the 56?
$1.8 million was...
$1,883,926.
And-
So that 20 is part of the 56.
Okay, so out of that 56, we have $1.8 million. So we're going to wind up then, assuming that we collect from all of the 56, do those meet the threshold to pay this service for doing this work?
The 56?
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
okay, so they meet that threshold.
Yes.
So essentially, we got 250.
Because they won't process them if they don't meet the threshold.
Got it. Oh, right, of course. So we have $250 to each of those. What are we getting in taxes from the 118?
It's a 4 to 1. In other words, if I think if we paid out 5, is that what you're asking?
I'm just trying to determine cost, what
Right.
we're
If we
spending.
paid out 5, you get 15,000.
In other words, if that's $1.8 million in personal property value that they've identified, correct?
Right.
Is that right? $1.8 million in so the question is, how much tax dollars will that generate?
Right.
Well, that $1.8 million is true cash value, so obviously you'd have that and multiply it by the millage of a particular unit
So you half it, so it's more like 900,000.
on those 56.
And
correct?
what's the millage rate
4.9838 mils currently.
for the county?
Per $1,000
Zero.
of value.
In the county?
Okay, so it's $30,000 roughly in taxes.
Or 36?
And then,
If
do
you're
we,
talking the county alone, yeah.
yeah, is that the county alone, then the county gets?
I think that's the millage that Dean was mentioning.
Yeah, so,
I think it's 30. Yeah,
for example, I see Chuck's in the audience. Chuck, do you know what the total tax is in Garfield? What's the total tax?
The township is 2.7.
I mean, the total of everything that gets assessed to your citizens. County, everybody, you don't know.
In the fire department, no?
So if it's, let's say it's on an average 40 mils, that would be in the ballpark. So 40 mils on $900,000 would be, help me, Dean, that's 36,000, I believe.
correct.
So that would be total taxes collected on that would be $36,000.
Total taxes.
For 1 year.
Okay. That's, right. And so what we're looking for is return business, so to speak. Okay, that's,
And so then if you took those 56 businesses times $250, you're looking at roughly, what would that be, about $13,000 roughly,
Okay.
that we would pay to them if they all meet the threshold.
and all of that isn't, we don't split that with the state, that comes to the county, or is there a part of it that goes to the state as well?
No, because on those, they don't pay the school tax.
Okay. Thank you.
Sonny?
Well, I had opportunity yesterday to help facilitate a meeting between some of the local township assessors, and Lori and Dennis and Larry and I were there. The township assessors are, I guess I would say, a little upset about the process. They were not informed in any fashion of how this was going to be handled. Residents in their community are receiving phone calls from a company out of North Carolina. They're given a phone number to call back in North Carolina. They may or may not get responses from that phone call back. If they don't get them called back, they received letters from, actually the letters came on county letterhead with Lori's signature on the bottom that says that the assessor will, within 15 days, just declare discovery on your personal property and make an assessment. Well, those letters went out. The township assessors do not even know who received the letters, but yet they, according to the letter, within 15 days are going to make an assessment of the property.
I want to make a statement on that. The assessors did receive all of the lists. what the...
Lori, we established yesterday, there are names that people have gotten letters that absolutely aren't on any of the lists.
What I wanted to finish saying was, the process that we used...
I believe it's my turn.
Okay, I'm sorry.
All right. I guess the other piece of that, I received an apology call this afternoon from a CPA who had intended to be here, but he has got over 40 businesses that he's trying to get answers from TMA about what they want, and they have now told him they will not take his phone calls, he'll have to submit questions in writing. You know, that's simply not acceptable. You know, I believe we went into this process with the idea that we were going to identify a list of businesses in this area who were not filing personal property tax. I do not believe we had any intent that this company out of North Carolina was going to be calling these people, and I apologize, I left papers in my truck that are quotes from people about the rude comments that they've received over the telephone and copies of the letters that they've received. That wasn't our intent, I believe. I believe we were going to identify the businesses, and then we were going to decide a course of action to move forward. That's not what's happening. I don't believe, at least in my perspective, I had no intention whatsoever to have this company out of North Carolina calling the residents in my community. And keep in mind, these aren't just businesses. In the list in Long Lake Township, I have Stacy's Tupperware sales. I have Bob's Knife and Saw Sharpening. I have daycares. I have adult foster care homes. I have all kinds of things, and many of those are exempt just simply by the law. But they show up on the list. So my concern is, if every one of those people files a form, because Lori's telling us that there's no minimum, you have to file, does this company receive $250 for all those people that file the form? And I'm not sure we have the answers to this. I just think more than anything else, this was just handled very, very poorly. And the communication to the township assessors and the township offices that are receiving the phone calls is simply unacceptable. Now she can have her turn.
Sorry.
Did you want to respond, Lori?
Yes, I would. We had meetings with the assessors. Obviously, when you have meetings with assessors, not all of them show up, but I had 2 meetings where I discussed this process. What I did was take the lists that we received, and these were raw lists, submit those lists to the township assessor and said, look, would you look at these lists to see on these lists if any of these businesses in your community should not be contacted or should be removed from the list. Those assessors returned those lists to me, the ones that they could identify. I then submitted that list to tax management, from which then they proceeded to contact the list. So we made an initial attempt with the local units assessor to remove obvious, but you got to realize some aren't obvious to the assessor or to myself, so some of them we didn't always recognize who they were.
Ross?
This $2,000, lower threshold that you talk about, is that just something you agreed to with TMA, or is that?
What I did was...
Can I finish the question? Is that statutory?
No, that's an agreement.
Okay, so any business, even if they had something worth $50, theoretically would have to pay personal property tax on that?
By law, again, by law in Michigan, even with no assets, a business is still required to report.
Okay,
But to go back to a comment...
Wait.
Okay.
You're saying that even if you don't have anything that would be subject to the personal property tax, you still have to fill out the form?
Including frequently, and most assessors do, send to exempt organizations. And again, the reason that I mentioned that that's done is an exempt organization might not be required to pay personal property tax, but if they have people located in their building that have leased equipment that are subject to personal property, those people are required. And the only way sometimes you know that is to ask that exempt organization, do you have this within your building?
Okay, but generally speaking, businesses with very few assets are generally left alone. as far as the personal property goes. I mean, we're uncovering some
Well,
very, very tiny little businesses that have almost no assets, and they're being asked to fill out this form.
no, they're not being asked to fill out the form, they're just being asked, are you a business, and in what type of business? Because many of them we've removed from the list. I've talked to some, and...
No, I mean, one of my neighbors, Laurie, who has a little sign-making business, who I think the sum total of his business assets is a jigsaw, has received 4 phone calls from these folks in North Carolina. And he's calling me, and he doesn't know what to do. I mean, I said, well, don't do anything right now. Let me find out what's going on. Now, you made the comment, if form is received from the assessor, it must be filled out. But these forms that TMA is sending out, that doesn't qualify, right?
It does, because that's the Michigan form.
But it's not from the assessor, it's from this outfit in North Carolina.
Well, it's from the assessor at the county.
No, it's from
Well,
Lori's
no,
office.
I don't-
That's coming from Lori's office.
Let me clarify this, I think it's important, this came up yesterday in the meeting we
Well, I
had.
want to know, because I got one of these forms too, so.
Part of the problem is, and not anticipated, but part of the problem is that TMA, as you can imagine, goes across the country and tries to do this. Well, Michigan is somewhat unique, we've talked about this before, because we still have a system of township government. Most states do not have townships. So in most states, equalization department is the assessing department. They should have caught that, we should have caught that, but in fact, when they say assessor in that letter, they're talking about equalization. But that's not an appropriate way to send it, because it's confusing to people
Well,
here,
it's
because we
confusing,
have
and
assessors.
it could probably be corrected, but that same letter is used in every county in Michigan. I mean, it has been used in every county in Michigan, so, but part of that is because as equalization director, I also can file personal property statements. So what I'm saying is, they're referring to, I think, to me as the assessor, they should have said equalization director, but they're at the county level with this function.
Well, but my question again is, did the form that was mailed out come from your office directly, or did it come from North Carolina?
It came from, they mailed it, yes.
They mailed it. So
Yes.
does that qualify as receiving a form from the assessor?
With my letterhead on it, it does.
No, I would, argue that point, but.
Also, one more point of clarification that Lori told us yesterday, and I just, so that commissioners have complete information, I want you, and Lori, you correct me if I'm wrong, but what you told us yesterday was, she made the determination that the $2,000 was the threshold. I believe you told us yesterday that was in consultation with several of the local treasurers and assessors.
Yes, we had the assessors meeting, and I asked at the meeting, because this question has been raised to me by both treasurers and assessors, that if you have low-value accounts, and again, that's why I think that has to be addressed to the legislature, if you have low-value accounts, it costs you more money to mail a tax bill than you get back, which I understand. And so my question to them was, what makes a lower threshold value acceptable to you? So that we, at least, if we have a statement, we're covering expenses, and that's where that dollar amount came from.
Okay, so what do you intend to do with the low-value accounts that TMA finds?
They will not be processed.
Okay, but yet, the businesses that receive these letters, it didn't say there's a $2,000 threshold, and if you're below that, we're not going to bother you. Right? I didn't say that on it.
That's where I'm going back to the law. We're talking, are we going to pay tax management? And I'm just saying, in Michigan, you're required to file irregardless of whether you have anything at all.
Yeah, I just think you're shaking the tree awful hard on this one.
Well-
I mean, I voted for this process,
Yeah.
and I'm really doubting my judgment at the time now.
We are not going to process anything under the 2,000. I'm going to sit down with the assessor. The 20 that we have are all over that threshold, and that's all I'm processing.
Well, why don't you-
What the local unit cares to do with that is their decision, and if they don't if they don't carry that through, that's their decision as to how they're going to handle it. But that is not going to be anything that's going to be handled by the county.
So what are you going to do, or what is TMA going to do with a business that doesn't file the form?
I would hope that if they're one of those lower businesses, they at least indicate something so that we can remove them and not try to make a judgment call, because what you're required to do if you don't receive any response is estimate, and I really don't want to do that.
So who does the estimation?
We base it on a software program which is based on similar businesses, and, it's pretty sophisticated.
Lori, the question was, who does it? Are you going to do it in
First of all,
equalization?
who does it, and
Yes,
secondly,
yes.
how are you?
Well, the assessors and I would have to sit down and take a look at that.
I mean, you're talking about not wanting to spend more money pursuing, taxes than the taxes you're going to collect. So how much time, again, using my friend with this little sign-making business, I mean, how much money, time, effort, et cetera, are you going to spend
I'm not.
pursuing him? if he
I'm not
do-
personally interested in the
if
man
he
with a little
doesn't-
sign-making
But
business.
if he doesn't fill out the form, what happens? That's what I want to know. If he doesn't fill out the form, what happens?
At that point in time, the assessors and the local unit and I would have to discuss how we want to handle that.
Okay.
Would one option that you have, Lori, be to just turn over that list of names to the local assessors?
Well, that's what I'm saying, that, I'm hoping that I can work with the local unit, and they can tell me how they wish to proceed on those. My interest in this is to make sure it's fair and equitable. I've had several people come in that we have helped that have had those low accounts, and one of the things that I pointed out in the letter to you, and I pointed out to them, we have exemptions. Not only are some of those, as you indicated, might be low value, but if they're a sole proprietor, they have a $1,000 exemption. There's an exemption. There's, if you have any expense at all on your personal property, it's written off in the federal income tax. We have exemptions for working tools of the mechanic. Very few of those, even if they filled it out and signed it, would have any tax obligation at all.
Okay, you said there's a $1,000 exemption?
Yes.
Because I asked that question before, and you said you didn't.
Well, if it's a sole proprietor.
Herb? Yeah, being one of those that received this form for a small investment club, and I got the phone call, and I explained that it was nothing but an investment club, they had no assets, and they still sent me the form, and said, you still have to fill the form out. Well, I did, and I sent it in. My concern is those people, they get that form and go, throw it away. Now, you're going to put all the individual townships and yourself through a whole lot of work processing those things because they didn't file the form. So now you got to take and say, okay, now I got to go through this process. So I'm spending a lot of time and effort to be able to figure out that this person doesn't owe any taxes. I think the biggest mistake that was made here is that we forget that we're a business for people. And we forgot to notify the people before this started to happen. We didn't go to the media and say, this is coming.
Well,
This is what's going to happen if you don't fill it out. This is what we're looking for. Doing some sort of marketing, some PR on this thing to be able to say, community, we're just trying to do the best we can to make sure that we're getting all the people that owe us taxes, that owe us taxes. The other thing I see as a major flaw in this thing is that when I do a DBA through Grand Traverse County or any county in the state of Michigan, why aren't I getting this form when I do a DBA? That should be an automatic. As soon as I fill out the DBA, you get it from the clerk's office. The clerk says, oh, this has now got to have this personal property tax form. So now, I'm sure that probably 99% of all the people who have ever done a DBA in any county or any place never even knew that they had to fill this form out.
Yeah, Commissioner,
talked
in
about
that
that.
regard, we talked about this yesterday, and evidently in Chuck Corn's township, they have a very good detailed kind of explanation for people on what you might need to do when you fill out a DBA, how you might have to file. And Kit Wilson has indicated they'll provide that to us.
Good.
And we have it, and what we're going to do is ask Linda if she would be willing to give that out. So we had that same discussion yesterday. That was a good
But it might
thought.
not, I've talked to other organizations, for instance, SCORE and some of the other ones, it might not just be Linda's office that we need to reach, I mean, for instance, you file an LLC, or you file, you know, a corporation, or you know, I'm trying to think of the various areas. It would be nice that we had, because it isn't just the DBAs necessarily in Linda's office that,
Right.
where they file businesses. And we did, though, have articles in the business news and in a few areas, obviously, not enough. Because when I have businesses tell me that they've never seen a statement in 15 years and it's the law in Michigan, you know, obviously, we've miscommunicated someplace.
Yeah.
And I don't know all of the processes. I know we talked about some different ideas, putting it on our website, the idea of, you know, handing it out in Linda's office if possible.
Well, being a SCORE counselor, you know, we've never talked about that to any one of our clients. And, you know, in my other business, I always filled it out, gave it to CPA, and he filled it out and took care of it. But when I'm in a real dinky, small investment club, and I get this thing, I mean, I don't owe any taxes because I don't have any equipment. You know, and so there's got to be a way to get an exemption so you know this right up front rather than waiting for somebody to try and do an audit and say, now all of a sudden, if you don't send this letter in, we're going to send you a tax bill. Now, if you send me a tax bill, you're putting all the townships and yourself through a tremendous amount of work. And then are we paying $250 for that company?
No.
Because it's under the $2,000 exemption, okay.
Yeah. The only ones that we will pay anything to are the ones that we sit down and review with the local unit prior to doing anything.
Well, the concern is that you got, a lot of these companies have gone out of business. And for whatever reason, they didn't connect with you and say, you know, we got this DBA, you got to renew it every 5 years. So every 5 years, you should be getting another form back on it. But if they went out of business within the last 2 or 3 years, and they're getting this form, they might not even be in Traverse City. We've lost a lot of people in our community.
Well, and those that have contacted me have been removed from the list.
But most people don't realize when they go out of business that they have to contact you. And I think that's a fallacy also.
But it's also, I guess, I would ask the question, how do you ensure equity and fairness? I mean, how do we know, you mentioned that he has a small business, how do we know that without asking the question?
I don't know, and I don't think, you know, I wasn't thinking of the very tiny, small, home-based type businesses,
Well, yeah.
but yet that's who I've mostly heard from,
That's who, yeah.
you know.
Jason?
I'll tell you, I mean, how do you ensure equity and fairness? I'm not sure that it's even possible, to be perfectly honest with this. I don't envy your position. I'm a rule of law guy. And one of the things that was sent out was a copy of the letter that says 30 days in jail for failure to file. Now, let me ask you a question. If somebody has filed, and they filed, and then they don't file, and then the township, say Garfield Township, sends them, sends them the form to file, but they don't file, but then they get the estimated assessment. Well, those people who are receiving the estimated assessment and then pay that estimated assessment, is that considered filing?
It's considered a late filing, yes.
Okay. So, I mean, so essentially you agree with it, and then it's a late filing, and then you pay. Okay. The reason I ask that is because that's me. I mean, I'll tell you, for the $60-some or whatever it is that I pay in personal property tax from my business, you know, because I have shelves that are aging for, you know, in my location in Garfield Township. You know, I read that, and I'm like, God, am I not filing? You know? The
statement that you're referring to is not the letter, but rather the state's instruction sheet for the personal property. That's what that starts with,
Okay.
that statement.
But
That's the
in your letter itself, it makes reference to the fact that you could go to jail. In the letter on your county letterhead with your signature on the bottom.
Referencing the state law.
It's referencing the state law.
Well, and obviously, we're all not going to get happy about this issue tonight or probably anytime very soon. I guess the problems that I have with this is it's for the $2,000 assessment, Long Lake Township's portion is $3.30. For that, they're going to send tax notice changes, tax bills, a 14-page personal property tax survey statement, handle it back, and then the people are going to pay their tax. Maybe if not, then the treasurer has to go figure out how they collect it. And it also says that if the people do not pay the tax, the assessor will confiscate property to equal the value of the tax. I spoke to a painter the other day that's a little upset, and he told the assessor, I own 2 ladders and 3 paintbrushes, but I want you in my shop tomorrow to declare what the value of this is, because it says that the assessor within 15 days will determine the value of your property.
I think the confiscation, though, I have a treasurer in the room, but I believe that's a treasurer's responsibility, isn't it?
Treasurer's responsibility, not the assessor. Anyway, the township's paying for it. For $3.30, they're going to do all this.
But that's where I guess I would say that we're obviously unhappy with the personal property tax law. I can't sit here and change the law.
Rob?
I understand frustration, but...
Yeah, Lori, I appreciate what you're trying to do, because there's no secret, revenues are down, and we're trying to make that up, and I appreciate you going after this and trying to do your part. However, as you said, a fair taxation requires all taxpayers to be taxed on the same basis. And I think one of the problems with this tax is real obvious, is you said it yourself, if it's not worth going after, we're not going after it.
No, I said that that's going to be the local unit's determination on those little ones,
Okay.
because
So
they...
you do personally pursue things, even if it's costs us more than...
It's...
Because if we're going to...
My job as an equalization director is to make sure and make a recommendation to this board that we have all property on the roll at 50% of true cash value. That's all I'm going to say. That's my job. The local unit's responsibility is to do that.
Okay. Well, I mean, the problem obviously is it doesn't make sense to be equitable, because you're going to spend more money chasing the $3 tax bills than it's going to come in. And that's, you said before, some of us don't like that tax. There's one reason why. It doesn't make sense. Personal experience, my company got at least a dozen calls from these folks, because we got 4 phone numbers. And they called them all several times, and we get phone solicitors all day long, and my secretaries are real good at saying, go fly a kite, bye. And they're not getting a phone call from Lori Spencer or East Bay Township. They're getting a call from someone at TMA that says they're from the assessor's office. And so I got a thing in the mail, and it said you have 15 days to prove that you paid this tax. Well, we've been in business 50-some years, and to my knowledge, we've never missed filing a tax, and I've got to go prove that. Now, what this does to me as a business owner is I have to spend my time on it. And what do I value my time at? Well, I think running a business with 20 employees, it's at least $20 an hour. I think it's a very cheap wage, and if I have to spend $3 on it, that's $60. If we take 5,000 local businesses and people and make them spend $60, that's $300,000 we are putting on the public to spend so that we can collect $30,000 in taxes. This system is putting the burden on the public, and that's what I really don't like about it. I appreciate the thought behind it, but I think I don't agree with the way TMA is pursuing this. It's putting a huge burden on our people. Obviously, we're getting phone calls. I'm getting phone calls on Saturdays from people saying, what is this crap? What are you guys wasting our tax dollars on? Well, no, we're not paying them anything. Well, that's good, but I still got to deal with the phone calls. And our citizens got to deal with these phone calls. I move we pursue ending this contract immediately.
Support. What was the motion? To move this, suspend this contract.
Well, I have some comments that I'd like to reference this. And I don't think it's necessarily, at least from the complaints I've received, the statutory obligations of the assessors or your office. They want to kill the messenger. You know, when you get a letter and it's talking, for example, Form L 4175. Well, that's like me talking to you about a UD-10. You got no idea what a UD-10 is. Most people don't. So when this letter from the people, and some of them were pretty aggressive, it really angered them. Number one, they were upset that why would we have hired a North Carolina firm? I don't recall when we hired them that being told that it was out of North Carolina. And I don't have a good answer for that because, like they said, look at all the unemployment we got in Michigan, and here we are supporting North Carolina. But anyway, if you go down and read the letter, it talks about the statutes and so forth and tells you where you can. If you look at the form on the back part, you know, the instructions, MCL 211.21. To the common layperson, that's very intimidating. The years I spent out issuing traffic tickets, if I'd have pulled Lori Spencer over because she ran a stop sign, and I jumped out back when it was a misdemeanor and said, well, Lori, do you know you can receive 90 days in the county jail and $100 fine or any part thereof? The court can assess that. Oh, well, Lori, you don't have your proof of insurance. And, you know, now that's intimidation. And that's exactly what these forms are doing. That's why cops don't go around. I mean, there might be a few eggheads that go around spouting statutes and so forth, but like a UD-10, that's just a simple accident report. You know, that's the state statutorily says police officers have to fill out at a traffic crash. But I think that's really the main problem here. And when we talked about this originally, I was under the understanding that we weren't going to spend $200 or $250 pursuing $50 in taxes. And because the limited publicity that was put out, I did have some comments at the time, well, what are you guys after? And if my memory serves me correct, we talked about Merit Energy, right? And some of their locations they'd never reported. And, you know, that's big dollars. And I thought that that's what we're going to pursue is the big fish.
Well, we chose not to go after the oil companies, so that was one of my options. And that would have been the utility accounts, and we chose not to do that. We only did the business.
But do you understand what I'm saying? It's the messenger. Statutorily, I think every commissioner here and citizens understand Lori Spencer, the assessors, the treasurers, they didn't make the law. It's the legislature. They understand that. But what they're mad about is the presentation or the request for the form, see?
And you know, as board members changed, we did have actually tax management do a presentation, a big presentation at the Civic Center in person, and I don't know, I'm looking at board members to see which, well, Dick, you had to have been here, but we had and Sonny, you must have been here, but we did have them come up in person, give a presentation, talk about it, and this was back when I asked for a grant to do audits on personal property, and right now I can't remember the year, but so, you know, tax management actually made a presentation, and the Civic Center was full. And they talked about their process and what they did, but that's been a couple of years now.
Yeah, like about 8.
Chris?
This is a question for Dennis. Dennis, as I recall, and my memory is not always perfect, the board, the reason they agreed to do this is Lori was faced with a layoff in her department. And the board agreed to keep that position, provided Lori went through this program and could fund it. And the other basis that was that, you know, it's the state law, and and it needs to be, everyone needs to be taxed fairly and equitably. My question, Dennis, is if we abandon this program, and is Lori going to be faced with losing a position in her department with no funding?
It's very possible. It would have to be looked at along with everything else that we're going to look at in over the next year. But I mean, sure, we're going to look at every department in that same way. Yeah.
Dick?
This is easy for me because I voted against it before because it wasn't a complete audit, if you remember.
Herb?
Dennis, can you tell me what the legal ramifications would be for us to terminate this contract? Because when I read this, it doesn't tell us, it only tells us it's going to go through June, but it doesn't give us an option to cancel the previous.
Yeah, a quick read of this, I did the same thing, Commissioner, and a quick read of this, I don't see the, I don't see a legal option for us to opt out.
Right.
If the board takes action tonight to say we want this discontinued, my next step would be to take it to our attorney and ask him to review the contract and look for reasons to substantiate breach of contract or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, and it may be that one thing I would ask him to look at, based on what I've heard here, is did they meet the intent of the contract in the way they went about their process? You may be able to make an argument that, we may be able to make an argument that they went farther than what it was anticipated according to the contract, and therefore we feel they breached it. That would have to be explored with the attorney. So anything you do tonight to discontinue the contract, we will follow through and look at what your options are for pursuing that.
I mean, we could be spending more money in trying to do legal fees to get out of this than we would be to just let it continue.
Yep.
I guess that's my concern.
I don't see any out.
Jason?
I don't either.
I don't like personal property taxes. I think it's nasty. However, you know, again, the law is the law, and I don't envy your position, and I don't envy you having to sit before, you know, I mean, because a lot of us don't like it. What I'd like to do, though, if I could, is, you know, given, I don't think we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater necessarily, but I think if we're going to move forward with it at all, I think that we need to at least better convey the wishes of the commission, and frankly, in how we engage the citizens. I mean, if I could, I'd like to offer an amendment. I'd like to move to amend the motion to better reflect the wishes, to go back and better reflect the wishes of the commission and set the rules before doing any more, before engaging our citizens any longer.
Your amendment is on the motion.
I'm amending the motion.
But you're assuming that the motion will stay there.
Well,
you're amending it, but what if we get, you can't do that.
Can I clarify, Jason? If we vote, yes, this board wants to end this contract, this is a recommendation to the main board meeting, which is at a future date.
Okay.
Between now and then, our attorney can look at this and give us a recommendation at that meeting.
Okay, I withdraw that.
Ross?
Laura, I had a question on Section 9 of the contract. The second sentence there at the very bottom of the page says, the total of TMA's invoices under this contract will also not exceed the total billable amount in taxes which result from the same discovery services. The example you've given us with the 56 and the 1.883 in total value, by my rough calculations, that looks at we would owe TMA $14,000 for the discovery, but only generate a little under $5,000 in county taxes.
It's just the reverse.
So it's about 36,000.
Now, I figured about 30, just roughly 36,000 in taxes, about 14,000 in
I think we slipped
payment.
the decimal point, though. It was
No.
3,600.
If you take 990,000 and
We did.
multiply it by 5 mils, you get $4,950.
Commissioner Richardson is correct. We
What are you
miscalculated.
saying at 5 mils? Where's the 5 mils?
5 mils is roughly what the county millage is.
The county millage, yeah, when I did
Okay.
it, Commissioner, I was taking an average millage of 40 mils.
No, but the next sentence of this section 9 says, "The intent of this section is to ensure that the county does not pay more for these services than they generate in revenue to the county."
Correct.
So I read that as the 5 mils that the county gets,
Well,
not the whole, I mean, if you look at the city of Traverse City, I
Yeah.
think our total tax bill is about 50 mils.
I guess I read that as if it only generates for the county $3,600, but costs $5,000, we would only owe $3,600.
Okay, well, that's my question.
That's how I interpret that, but
And that's my belief.
And
as
that's,
well.
and when it talks about, because it doesn't say, but it talks about will not exceed the total billable amount in taxes, should that read for 1 year?
And I know on each
Well, yeah.
one of the accounts that we have, we way more than cover the 250.
So far.
Well, all I'm saying is that the 56 accounts with the $1.884 million in total value, you know, it's sort of a 3-to-1 kind of a deal there, so.
Sonny?
Now, Lori, if I understood you correctly yesterday, you're hoping to take these and file them with the state as an omitted tax and collect the 2010 tax on those?
That's.
And you're also going to go after-
Once you miss border review, that's how you bring personal property onto the roll is a 154.
And then you're also going to go after delinquent tax for 2009, 2008?
That is something I want to talk with the local units on.
No, because one of the expressions that the local units had is because they don't handle any of their delinquent tax bills, their taxes go direct to the county treasurer. When they become delinquent, they have no way to collect on delinquent taxes, and the statement was made that we were going back 3 years.
I don't know that Jean is the only treasurer here, I think, or is there another one? I don't think that was the issue. I think part of the issue is some local units don't. The unique thing about 154s or homestead denials is the unique thing is the odd interest. And typically, some of our units, and I think Garfield is one of them, do you have the delinquent package? Now, she has the capability of calculating that, but some of our other units of government don't have that delinquent package, so it's a little more problematic with their software program to be able to calculate the interest.
Long Lake is an example of that. That's what they told us yesterday. I just feel it's incumbent to say this, and I'm not making a reference to whether this is a good motion or a bad motion, but here's the dilemma. If you pass this is a dilemma that you must realize you place Lori in. She has received tax statements from individuals participating in this program who have said, yes, I didn't file, and now here's my numbers, okay? Lori is in a position then, once that's done, where I think she legally has the responsibility to follow through with that. Okay, I just want you to understand, it's important to understand the situation that you place her in. And now you've increased the inequity because others that may not have filed or are in the process of filing will not or may not, while 56 have or 1,000 have. And so I'm just pointing out that you need to be aware of that situation that you will cause, that will be
At this
caused.
point, all of them, we're actually essentially through with the program except for processing the statements because all of them have been contacted, all of the letters have been mailed.
Ross and then Sonny?
And I still don't know which way I'm going to vote on this because of the quandary mentioned here, but getting to Section 8 of the contract, I would suggest that TMA has not honored the contract because in Section 8, it says, any account with a reported, estimated, or assumed value below the $2,000 threshold will not be processed and will not be a billable account. And then the next sentence says, TMA will not process the account or attempt to collect more information about these locations or business operations. And again, I'm using the example of my guy with the 4 phone calls that TMA did not stop pursuing it when they knew there wasn't anything there. They kept
And I,
pushing and pushing and
you
pushing.
know, my interpretation of that is what they're saying is that process where we submit that as a 154 will stop.
Well, I don't think that's what's happened. And
Well,
that's, and that's,
but
and that's
we
what
haven't reached
concerns
that
me.
point with that individual. He might report, but we're not processing that as a 154.
No, it says, why isn't TMA saying at the start, how much stuff do you have that you operate in your business? And they could strike a lot of the stuff right off. I mean, here this guy has talked to him 4 times, and they're still pursuing him, and he views it, now I don't know because I haven't heard the conversations, he views it as a threat that bad things are going to happen if he doesn't comply.
Has he?
And yet the very thing says here, will not process the account or attempt to collect more information.
Right, because,
they obviously have.
because that's, the process part of it is that submitting the 154. In that, but if indeed that individual indicated that what their value is, but I would suspect that we don't know what that, they might be saying they don't have anything, but we don't know what that number is. But I not being privy to the conversation, I don't know, but I know
But yet
what
the
our.
whole thing's on the honor system, right? I mean, the whole personal property tax is basically on the honor system.
Correct. We're doing a discovery.
Tony?
Well, I supported the motion because I wanted to have further discussion, but the fact is, I do not believe there is any legal grounds by which for us to cancel this contract. I don't think we
agree with
can
you.
prove they breached the contract. I cannot imagine that any of us had any idea, and I don't think that even Lori would have had any idea that the citizens of this community would be badgered to the level that they have been by signing this contract. I truly don't. I've got, and they're in my truck, but I have lists of supposedly identified businesses in Long Lake Township that have 4 and 5 businesses listed to a house residence in a subdivision. Everything from handyman services to house cleaning to a CPA. They have 4 or 5 different businesses operating on one house in a subdivision. And in today's world, there's a lot of people that are doing anything they can do in their spare time to make an extra buck to feed their family, and we're going to go after them for personal property tax because they own a lawnmower? I just don't understand.
Did the assessor remove those though, Sonny?
What's that?
Did you know whether the assessor, that was the initial list that you're talking about?
I know that she's went through some of the list.
Well,
I'm not sure.
I think a
and
lot
the other
of
thing-
those, I agree with you, were removed initially by the assessor. And I do have a copy for any commissioner that would like to see it, the final list, if you'd like to take a
The other
look at
thing,
that
the
list.
other thing is the township assessor, at least, from what I'm told in Long Lake Township, received these lists within a week of the time they were doing the March Board of Review. They had more on their plate than they could handle already, let alone trying to edit these lists and get them back to Lori, because she truly wanted those, she wanted these handled by the March Board of Review, and that couldn't possibly have happened.
Chris?
Well, I will not be supporting the motion. I'm not going to put Lori in that position. And, I agree with the board. It was a mistake to do it the first time, but we did it. We've made mistakes before. We probably will make them again, but the process is almost over. And so I will not be supporting the motion.
Rob?
Essentially, what the motion does is it puts us as a recommendation to our board meeting next week and brings with it to that meeting a recommendation from our attorney, and he can tell us whether there's a way out or not. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a contract lawyer. I can't make that call, and I don't think any of us here qualify other than just plain logic. My point is, I want the badgering to stop, my constituents, and if someone has a motion that will accomplish that, I'll gladly withdraw mine.
Call the question.
I think the only point would be, Rob, is the fact that the discovery portion is what they were contracted to. I don't believe the means by which they used to get the discovery was anywhere near our intent. But the discovery portion, which they were contracted for, is pretty much done. Now it's just a matter of the reporting part.
Is it possible, Lori, to ask you to call them tomorrow and say, do not make another phone call?
Absolutely.
I know you're saying they're done with that, but just to be sure, if you call them tomorrow and say, that's it, do not make another phone call, will they stop making phone calls?
Again, I believe so. I believe we've done most of it. Again, I'd like to have the attorney
No, I'm not.
review that, because I just, what I'm saying is, I wonder if they will feel, whether they've done a lot of work and won't get paid for it type of thing.
Well, but I thought that we said the discovery was over now.
Yes, that initial discovery
If
is
the
over, but
discovery is-
what isn't over is those returns processed.
All right.
The badgering.
Their job is done.
No
But those-
call. I mean, that part of it's done, but we're waiting for those returns to finish coming in and
All right,
processing.
but here's the thing, that's what I'm asking, Lori, based on Commissioner Henschel's comment. If what we're waiting for is the company to do their paper processing and send it to us, that is one thing. But if in doing that, they're going to keep making calls to people and keep sending forms to people, that's what the commission
I'm
would
sure
like to stop.
I'm sure we could ask that question, and I don't think that would be a problem.
Call the question.
Rob, did you want to withdraw that motion?
No.
If not, I'm going to call the motion then. Would you read the motion, please?
Moved by Commissioner Henschel and supported by Commissioner Willock to end the TMA contract as soon as possible.
Everybody understand the motion? All in favor? Well, we'll just do roll call.
Commissioner Lemkool.
No.
Max Bauer.
No.
Richardson.
No.
Thomas.
I hate to, but no.
Wheelock.
No.
Gilman.
No.
Henschel.
Yes.
Chairman Flees.
No. Motion's defeated. But I think, Lori, the message from the board is perfectly clear, and I think you need to make the phone call.
I would like,
Because if it continues, we got a meeting next week, and we certainly can.
We'll invite you back,
I would appreciate it
Lori.
if you'd get a hold of Mr.
believe you
Cooney
me, you think you've had a few
and ask
phone
him to
calls, you
look
ought
at
to sit down in my office in my chair.
No, thanks.
Yeah, yes. I
Okay,
plan
we'll
on doing that.
have Dennis get a hold of Mr. Cooney and get his interpretation for next week, just in case we have a problem. Hopefully we won't. Thank you, Lori.
All right.
We won't sign any more contracts that don't have an out.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, the next item is the EDC. Is Jean here? Yep.
Jean asked if we could handle her grants after the Lori issue. You know, she figured it'd be easier. once-
Take your
Good
time,
We're
Gene.
just warming
Red
up,
Wings don't
Dennis.
start till 10:30.
Great. Good evening. My name is Jean Dorenzi. I'm with the Planning and Development Department of Grand Rivers County. The first loan that is before you is with Plascon Films. The representative of the company is here, the owner being David Peterson, along with his banking representative, Wade Van Housen from the Bank of Northern Michigan, and Tino Breitup from the Traverse Bay Economic Development Corporation. The loan is a direct loan of $222,000 for a new piece of equipment for Plascon Films. It would be a new plastic bag cutter and welding machine. The owner, David Peterson, will contribute 15% of the total cost of the equipment, or $43,000. Mr. Peterson owns 4 businesses with Plascon, being Plascon Inc., Plascon Films, Plascon Packaging, and Plasport. All of the businesses and the relationship is outlined in the business plan on pages 17 through 24 of your packet. The combined revenue of the businesses is over $10.4 million. Plascon specifically is $4.4 for 2010, and their projected growth for Plascon Films is an additional revenue of $2 million. And their increase in growth for Plascon Films has been documented in overtime and their projected sales. As I outlined in your packet, Plascon restructured their debt with the Bank of Northern Michigan, which brought a more favorable banking for them in their debt. However, the bank is unable to extend additional debt to them at this time, which is why they are in front of the EDC because of this gap financing for this equipment. Based on the business strength, the business growth, having first lien on the equipment, the EDC unanimously supported this direct loan for a 7-year direct loan with an interest rate of 4.9% collateral on equipment, and having personal guarantees from David Peterson and guarantees from the other businesses, the other 3 businesses, Plasport, Plascon Packaging, and Plascon Films.
Ross?
I would like to move approval of a 7-year, $222,000 direct loan to Plascon Films. Interest shall be fixed at 4.9% with collateral on the equipment as for the county of first position.
Support.
Dick?
This has to have a public hearing?
You will have a public hearing at the county board
Next week.
meeting next week, yes. And as indicated, the business representatives are here as well.
Ross?
This was passed unanimously by the EDC, which means that even I voted for it. And it's, I think what we have here mostly is a temporary cash flow problem with Plascon Films, but it is fairly unique that we have first position collateral on the equipment. Usually we're behind everybody else, so that's a good thing. It seems to have a solid business plan and a solid business, and really the addition of the extra equipment is so that he can, increase production without having to keep paying people overtime because he doesn't have enough equipment to do everything he needs to do. So that's why it's one of the reasons I support it.
Herb?
Is this also going to receive a personal property tax exemption, this equipment?
This
If
equipment...
not, why not?
They have not requested it, and
Okay.
I don't
think I've heard I'd like to.
This project doesn't, I don't believe this project has any tax exemptions, does it?
No, I noticed. Doesn't have any exemptions
There's
on it at
no
all.
tax abatements on this project at all, is there?
yes, there is an abatement.
Yeah, Tino?
I'll just jump in. This is actually the 4th expansion project of Plascon Group. I'm sorry, Tino Bredup with the Traverse City Area Chamber of Commerce of Traverse Bay EDC. 4th expansion by Plascon Group and their family of companies in the last 6 years. It's been a combination of physical expansion activity and real property expansion and personal property investments. We have in the past pursued tax abatements on real and personal property investments. With this particular project, we are not.
Good.
Any other questions? Everybody understands the motion? Mm-hmm. All in favor?
You're going to have to do a roll call.
Move things
Maxwell?
along.
Mr. Maxbauer?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman?
No.
Henschel?
Yes.
Lemko?
Yes.
Chairman Flees?
Yes. Motion passes. Next item, Jean?
The next loan is for CS Sewing. The company representatives are here today, Jennifer and Scott Creda, and Tino Breitup is here as well. The application is for $70,000, and it is for a security loan. CS Sewing is a retailer for sewing machines and a reseller of used sewing machines. They provide repair and support services through digital communications. It's that digital communication that is allowing them to have a niche in this industry and allowing them to do this expansion. And the request for the revolving loan fund will be to expand on a national level and to expand their website and their online support services. And they'll increase their support staff, their online technical support staff, by 2 employees and 1 additional employee as well. Geographically, they're in northwest Lower Michigan, and they're expanding their technical supports and online services for the used equipment as well. They do have an exclusivity agreement with 2 of the sewing machine manufacturers, and in lieu of a direct loan, the EDC is recommending that we do a security, being purchasing a certificate of deposit with Traverse City State Bank, and then the bank would service the loan and loan the money to the company directly. The recommendation is that it would be a 7-year certificate of deposit, and we would receive the interest on that CD. The collateral would be second on all equipment and inventory and personal guarantees from the business owners.
Herb?
I'll make a motion to approve the security loan for CS sewing machine.
Support.
Ross?
And again, this loan was also approved by the EDC on a unanimous vote. This is a company that is a small but growing company, and they seem to have some good ideas, and this loan will be used to basically expand their boundaries from beyond the physical boundaries of Grand Traverse County through using the internet to do both education, training, actually do technical service over the internet, and also find a better way to market used equipment. So I thought it was a good idea.
Sonny?
You know, when I read this, do I understand basically what we're going to do is guarantee them a line of credit? So we're going to purchase a CD which the bank will use to give them a revolving line of credit?
Right, yes. But we would not be servicing it, the bank would.
Right.
Jason?
Little known fact about Commissioner Gilman. We have a serger that we purchased through them. It's really cool. And you know, my wife watches this, so I know she's going, yeah. I can't tell you how many times I go, God, what could I build with? What could I make with that now? They really have a great product. And also they have wonderful tech support. They do classes for free for people who bought stuff. I mean, it's a great company. Having said that, I'm not a loan officer.
Did you, do you do treadle machines? Because I just got rid of my dial telephone, so.
Rob?
I've actually known Scott for a number of years, and I know that if it's in writing, he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. He's a great local businessman with a lot of deep roots in this area, and I'm all for it.
Let's vote.
Herb?
So, knowing Scott from back in my Boy Scout days, and he was one of my scouts in the scout troop, you know, that says an awful lot about the...
You know, I was going to vote for this.
So Scott and I go back many, many years and have many campouts together.
Don't use him as a character reference. It's
No,
not
you know,
good.
as a character, I mean, I think Scott's is the most utmost, and I just really encourage everybody to support this because, you know, this is a quality business with a quality person, and him and his wife make a great team.
And your father's name was?
Yeah.
I knew his father rather well. So. All right, everybody understand the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
You're gonna
Do you need a roll call?
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yeah.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman?
No.
Henschel?
Yes.
Lemko?
Yes.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Chairman, please.
Yes. Motion passes.
Thank
See you
you.
next week.
Thanks for your support.
Hi, Jen.
Yeah.
Next item is Human Resources. Number one, the Siegel wage and salary study. And Jen, would you identify yourself, please?
Jen Seaman, Human Resources Director, Grand Traverse County. Should I defer to you, Larry?
That'd be fine.
Or do you want
Because it came from,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
or do you,
The Siegel wage and salary study is really growing feathers. It's old.
It's cobwebs.
I believe we received it in 2008. This is 2011. And my recommendation to this board that we put a moratorium on the Siegel wage and salary study until further notice. And I think we need probably a letter to all the employees explaining why we're putting the moratorium on there. But in reality, I think it's kind of it could be, unless the board changes it, a permanent moratorium, because the study really is aged, and I think we'd have some difficulties with it. Dennis?
Jen and I asked for a meeting with the chairman and the vice chairman on this issue because in the work plan that you directed for Jen's office, her job this year was to go through and reevaluate the whole study, look at the market, and reevaluate all the positions. We've already adopted the job descriptions, remember? That was just new job descriptions, which we needed under federal law. But you know, with the economy the way it is and with things that we were facing, we talked to the commissioners and just didn't feel that at this point in time there was any sense in moving that project forward because we didn't see any realistic hope that anything would be done with it in the conditions that we're in. So that's why we had that discussion, and we agree with the commissioners that this makes sense to do.
Jason?
I would move that we have a moratorium on the Siegel wage and salary study until further notice, and that we send a letter to all the employees explaining the moratorium of the Siegel wage and salary study.
Support.
Herb?
Yeah, can you redo that motion and say, make it permanent?
You can.
I'll amend it to say this is a permanent, we're going to put the nail in the coffin here.
Yeah, because we've discussed this, and like I said before, you know, the chick's got feathers now, and it's time to put it to bed.
I'll support the amendment.
Okay.
So we vote on the amendment, and then we vote on
Okay. Dennis?
Yep, I just want to be on record. I don't recommend that. I believe that our wage and salary system is, and while it may need to be redone, our wage and salary system is now 20 years old or more. We, at the time that we did the Siegel study, we had in excess of 80 appeals already sent to us saying, we don't believe we're properly classified. This was back in 6 or 7, and the board made a commitment to them that we will look at those and we will redo this wage study. So and of course it's your decision, but I want you to understand where I'm at on this. By making the decision to kill this completely, we will be in a situation where, you know, we will be in excess of 100 positions that I think are going to be petitioning under the old wage and salary system to say, my job's not classified right. And in my mind, there's no sense in moving forward with reevaluating those positions under a 20-some-year-old system. And why I agreed with this recommendation to start with, just so you understand, is putting a moratorium on it says we're not throwing the whole thing out, and pieces of it will be used, at a time when the economy is such that we can afford to look at it. It may have to be reevaluated in terms of marketing, and it's a subtle difference, but what it does is it allows us to say for the next several years, we're not relooking at positions unless there's a reorganization that takes place. That's the reason that I thought it was better to leave the structure in place and freeze it. But I just want you to understand my position on it.
Sonny?
Well, I think the point that I would make is, although, I think we all probably at this point agreed that the Siegel study is flawed, there are parts of it that make sense. The job descriptions that we didn't have before and the classifications and some of those things are important. Dennis is right, we've used some of those job descriptions to classify people since then. So to just throw the whole study out, you do lose some of that. I think there's still some tools in that study. While I don't agree and probably never did agree with all the financial implications of the study, there were parts of the study that had value to us, and I think they still have value to us. So I hate to throw the whole study out because I think there's still tools in there that have some value.
The thing is that, in my opinion, I know the board didn't agree with the way the study came back, but I believe that the relationships between the various jobs were good. So in other words, the comparative nature of the study that showed where jobs fit among other jobs, although there were some errors that have to be corrected, I think that was basically good. And at some point, in the future, when we're in a better position and we see the need to do a wage and salary study, I would rather not start from the beginning and go through that whole process again. I'd rather then direct Jen to go back and look at the market, go back and look at the comparisons of the jobs, and only do that fraction of the study that needs to be redone. And I think your big concern, or the board's big concern at the time, was they didn't feel that it equitably addressed issues, particularly looking local markets for local positions that are easily and very competitive, and looking, instead of nationwide the way they recommended, looking statewide for some other positions where there could be competitiveness in those positions. So that's the reason that I think that there was still some value to it, but right now is not the time to be doing anything with it, because we're just not in a position where even if we did the whole thing over, we could implement any of it. We just don't have those funds.
Well, Jen's relatively new with the county, but she's the new Human Resources Director, and I don't see where that motion would prevent her from using that as a resource. Obviously, she's going to have some more sources, or maybe she has some ideas that would be really beneficial to this county. And we're certainly not saying, Jen, you can't look at the Siegel study at all.
Yeah.
We're just saying.
Yeah. I'm not trying to be argumentative. I just want to I'm glad we're having this discussion. What I would not want to happen is Jen then to use this and use it as part of our negotiations in a labor contract, and have the labor union come back and say, on April 23rd, the county board took action to kill that study. You should not be using any of that study for your comparatives. And it's just, there's implications that come down the road to this that I feel we may not all realize right now. But we'll work with whatever the board does.
I guess the reason my motion is just that I don't want to go further with doing any more business with Siegel. I don't think they've done us any good.
Well, that contract was discontinued 2 years ago. We have not had any contact with Siegel, nor will we again.
Okay.
That's over.
That was my whole issue
that's
here.
Done.
Is that to make sure that we are not going to do any more business with the Siegel study. If just a partial moratorium, a temporary, I guess I don't have a problem with that, if that's the will of the group, because and I understand with Dennis's explanation that could be a challenge for Jen, and so I apologize for that. So, but, maybe.
Withdraw your amendment.
I'll withdraw it.
I'll withdraw the second.
Okay.
Did you have something you wanted to comment on?
No, actually, I was just wondering if it was a technical thing that we're really looking at, and frankly, if we put it on the shelf forever, hey, it's on the shelf. If and it's not officially done with, so.
I think we're on the same page on this.
Okay.
I just don't want to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, everybody understand the
Tie your
motion
heels.
on the floor? Reference to
Okay.
Siegel study, moratorium? All in favor? Signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Next item is, I'm sorry, something like, is the POAM, Police Officers Association of Michigan, our corrections officers, which are in our jail bargaining unit. We have come to an agreement with that unit as detailed throughout here. This would be an agreement starting January 1st of this year, going through the end of 2014.
What's important to know in this agreement is that you know that we've talked about the differentiation between corrections officers who are no longer 312 eligible and deputies, sergeants, and captains. This agreement does not reflect the same settlements that we had for 312 groups. This reflects the corrections officers as non-312 bargaining unit, just like our other non-312 bargaining units.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the recommended contract with the corrections officers and the Police Officers Association of Michigan.
Second.
Sonny?
Dennis, you know, and I probably know the answer to this question, but when you made that comment, I'm not sure. Are the sergeants in the jail 312 eligible?
Yes.
Even though they're corrections officers?
Yeah, because they're part of they're still a joint unit of all sergeants, which includes road patrol, which are 312 eligible. Remember, historically, the corrections officers used to be with the deputies. When they were one unit, one union, they were 312 eligible because police officers have to be 312 eligible. But the deputies requested to separate from the corrections, and once they did that, corrections lost their ability to be 312.
I had forgotten that the sergeants were still...
The sergeants are all together still.
We're still together.
Yeah.
Chris?
I will not be supporting the motion, primarily because when I read that there is a cap on the contribution for health insurance benefits, I disagree with that strongly. I think all employees should pay a percentage, and it should be a flat percentage of their health care costs.
Just to help clarify that, I understand what Commissioner Max Bauer's position is. This is the same as 3 or 4 other contracts that you have approved. We gave, at your direction, we gave them a choice. If they didn't take a cap, we gave them a long-term disability policy. Several of the units took that. If they took the cap, they were not eligible, we would not negotiate a long-term disability policy. So we have, I think, Jen, 3 or 4 that decided to take the cap. They're primarily Pat Spiedel's units. They decided to take a cap. But we want you to understand, for those of you who will vote for this, that we estimated this cap and negotiated this cap at a level that we think is safely high enough that we will not hit it under the percentages that we've negotiated.
Jason?
Once these contracts are, and once this is established, this is a contract, and so until 2014, it is what it is.
That's correct.
Given, recent legislative attempts in Lansing on how government contracts are to be handled and talking about the benefits and whatnot, I mean, if we were to go forward, not approve the contract, and say we need a little more time to see what Lansing is up to, is that something that is at all advisable, or should we just move forward right now and
we have a good
deal on it?
We've talked about this, Commissioner. Our recommendation, in order to maintain the fact that we're bargaining in good faith, and we don't know when that might happen, we believe that we should settle these contracts. Now, you're absolutely right. Once we do that, if the law goes into effect that says public employees will pay 20% of their pay starting in 2013, which I believe is the proposal right now, this would not take effect with this group until 2015. But we're getting ready to negotiate the next batch of contracts. And remember, we've been negotiating this now for 8 months.
This one, a long time.
Long time. So, that's where you get into that bargaining in good faith. We're getting ready to start 2 more. And we talked about this yesterday. Our intention is to come to you and say, these things are going on in the state. How do you want to handle this?
And again, with some of the I don't know how much we can talk, about the different.
No, it's okay. I'll tell you if we should
With the Me
stop.
Too-isms in some of the contracts.
Yeah.
I mean, is this contract going to set us up for?
No.
Anything?
No. And this one, we have 2 contracts or 3, Jen, that go to 2014 now?
I think this is the third.
Okay.
It's either the third or the fourth.
And so
Apologize.
what's going to happen, Commissioners, what we talked about yesterday is because of what's going on in Lansing, the next contracts are the ones, unfortunately, it's the deputies, but they're the ones that we kind of have to get new direction from you. Okay? You're going to have to make a decision. Are the deputies, which is the one contract that really remains, the big one that remains, are they going to be the last of this group, or are they going to be the first of the new group? That's what we're going to talk to you about, okay? If you say, our position is they're the first of the new group, then strategically, we may only be looking at a 1-year contract. Because if you tell us you're not to commit beyond that date, that the state may set this, we'll negotiate a shorter contract and have a reopener once we know where that's at. That was our intention anyway.
Does everybody understand the, Rob?
Is there a reason we're not negotiating a shorter contract with this one?
Primarily because the sheriff had requested, and at the time the board had agreed, most of his contracts expired, his employee contracts all expired in the same time frame, and we're trying to get them on different cycles so that all his contracts don't come due in 1 year. He has 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5 contracts. And so we're trying to stagger the years on them. And, I suppose we could have went to 2012, but we really never do a 2-year contract. We always try to do a 3-year contract or a 4-year contract if we can. Just because the cost of these negotiations, it's just lots and lots of hours and time.
What kind of cost are we talking?
We're talking about our time. I mean, Jen and I in this contract, Jen and I and Nate and Bob Hall.
On the management side. And then
on the management side.
Union has 4 stewards that.
Right. I would venture to
that are on
say,
duty, 2 that are not.
we've got, in this contract alone, we have 400 to 500 hours of time into this.
Do we pay the stewards?
Absolutely, we do.
To negotiate their own?
Absolutely.
Yep.
It's another thing to talk about. In Marquette, we used to only negotiate contracts in the evenings.
And keep in mind, these stewards are, it's 24/7 operation. So with the sheriff's department, 2 of them are on duty at that time, and 2 were
That's
off
true.
duty.
Yeah, and they don't get paid for
Not all
coming in
4
when
of
they're
them.
not on duty.
So we're only paying 2 of the 4.
That's true. But all our other contracts, we negotiate during the day, with employees that are working during the day, so, yeah.
And we have to remember, this contract, actually, unlike in previous years, we're only 4 months behind getting this contract settled, because it should have taken place January 1st. So, I've seen us still late into the fall trying to negotiate contracts, particularly with the sheriff's department, that should have been done.
If we would have started this contract a month or 2 ago, we would have been asking you the questions that Commissioner Gilman is asking. It's because we've been negotiating it so long and we were into it already. Once you get in the middle of a contract, based on speculative, discussions, you can't really, say, hey, listen, we want to turn around and start over. That's when you get unfair labor practices against you, and we have to bargain in good faith.
Everybody understand the contract, or the motion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call?
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Gilman?
Yes.
Henschel?
No.
Lemko?
Yes.
Ford?
No.
Richardson?
Yes.
Chairman Flees?
Yes. Motion passes.
You want to take the lead on this? You want me to?
I can.
Go.
All right. So the next item is the RFQ process for our employee benefits agent for 2012. If you'll recall, last year, we went out for a full RFP with our employee benefits agent, and we received 8 responses. We went through the process of looking at those RFPs. We had members of the public, as well as myself, Dean Bott, and Sally Dreves, as members of Grand Traverse County that reviewed the proposals. We interviewed the top 3. And after those interviews, it was determined that Cadillac Insurance and Great Northern Benefits were the top 2. And Dennis and I have been talking about this and what we want to do going forward. If you'll recall, we gave Great Northern Benefits a 1-year agent of record at the end of last year, so that would be for 2011. So we are looking for 2012, what we need to do, and would like to start this process earlier in the year. Instead of waiting until later in the year. So that way we can, with our RFP, we can go out for bids for our benefits. Last year, it was only for the service part of the contract because we had already negotiated our contract with Blue Care Network. So it was just, what is the agent going to service? What are they going to provide us? There was not a proposal of cost for our plan, which is right now is a fully insured plan. And we would like to get fully insured plans as well as self-insured plans as part of this proposal with each agent.
A couple of other additional comments. The reason to go for we went for a 1-year contract was because all of our other insurances, disability, life insurance, dental insurance, all expire at the end of this year. All have to be bid out for next year. So we didn't want to get in a situation where we went on a multi-year contract with one when we have to bid out all the insurances. So what we're proposing here is something that's very different from what we've done in the past. First of all, we don't want, since we went out and we did this RFQ for people who wanted to be our agent, and we went through that process 6 months ago, we're asking you not to go through that process again. We're asking you to take the 2 highest ranked ones by this public committee we had and let those 2 kind of battle it out. Okay? In the past, our agents of record were not employed or, well, they weren't contracted with Grand Traverse County. In other words, their payment came from the premiums of the firms that were selected to provide us insurance. The health insurance company paid them, the life insurance company paid them a percentage, a dental paid them, and so while they kind of worked for us, they were also being paid by these insurance companies. What we're proposing here is those 2 agents of record will give us a bid, whether it's a percentage of the total premium or a flat dollar amount. We're going to ask them to have a contract directly with us, so they'll get nothing from the insurance companies. They will give us a bid, and I want to do 3 years. I want them to give us 3 years of what their price is going to be our agent of record, with the understanding they'll get nothing else from the insurance companies. Then we're going to ask them to go out and also get insurance bids for all these different insurances, minus any kind of commission, because they're going to be paid by us. Our thinking is, this way, they are only beholden to us. They work for us, not for anybody else. And we think that way we're going to have their attention as much as we would like to have their attention. Now, the cumbersome part of this is, and you may ask the question, well, why not just do that and then let them go bid the insurances? We think that if we make both agents go bid all the insurances, they are going to have to they're not only going to sharpen their pencil on their own premiums, they're going to have to really work hard trying to find us the best and most economic insurances under the parameters we give them, because that's going to also influence whether they become our agent of record. So that's the other component of it that we think we ought to do. Now, the insurances are only going to be probably, in all likelihood, 1-year bids, because, for example, health insurance, no one's going to give you more than a 1-year bid, or it's going to be so high you won't be able to purchase it. So, it's kind of a combined thing here, but I really think the important components that we feel we would like you to consider is looking at the 2 highest bidders that we had and having them become agents, real agents of the county, by having a contract directly with us, and then allowing them to bring in the cost. And then what we would do is select the agent. Now, once we selected the agent based on their prior, their service, the interviews that we did before, and what they got as their own cost, but also the kinds of bids that they got, because what that'll show us is, one company may only have 2 life insurance companies, another one might have 5. And you might say, well, that's a plus for the firm that had 5 because they have a farther reach, and in other words, they have more access to different programs. Those are things we would evaluate when they come in. But we think that tying them up for 3 years into this contract kind of makes sense. But that's our idea, and we kind of wanted to bounce it off you and see what you think.
Ross?
I'm trying to get the timing down here. So we're going to go to these 2 companies, and probably next month, and we're going to give them 30 to 60 days to respond, and then 30 to 60 days for us to review. So we're going to be reviewing not just how much money they want to charge us to be their agent, but actually review the proposals for the health insurance for the county.
Not just health, everything else.
And all the other stuff, too.
Yep.
Okay, and the insurance companies will, because I always thought in the past, it was always, Priority didn't pay a premium, but Blue Cross always did.
Yeah, they're going to have to adjust that.
We're
We're going to require them to adjust that.
So the insurance companies will deal with that.
And they've indicated their willingness to do so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rob?
Who do you know that's doing this model versus the old way we've been doing it?
We don't know anybody that's
So
doing it.
this is pretty much a new idea that you came up with, or Jen did?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think it's important, and I agree with Dennis. The last go-round we had with the agent of record wasn't the way the county normally proceeds with bid procedures. And if they're working for us, we're paying the premium, or we're paying their wages, we certainly have input as to how we're going to do it, the process which they're going to use.
Well, and that's a good point. I don't want to get in that situation again where we've got an agent who's a quasi-governmental representative bidding one against the other without a specific deadline. I was very uncomfortable with that. I know, and I always think back of the sheriff. The sheriff is always telling me, if you just let me go, and I can go back and play one against the other, I can get the best price. And it's absolutely right. But it also opens the door to perceptions of other things going on that's why there's a law. So, yeah, this way, when they're our agent, they're going to bid to a date specific, and they're going to get us the best deal that they can, and that's another reason to do this. But, yeah, I don't know if you were saying that was a good thing or a bad thing, but it was our idea. We just think that's, I think a change was important.
It can be a good thing, but it can also be dangerous. I mean, you're stepping outside of the box,
Yeah, but you guys have told me this before. Sometimes you got to be risk takers and innovators, and if it provides a better work product for us, I think it's worth a shot. It isn't going to hurt us.
Herb?
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're trying to do. My concern is just, that we're closing the door for any of the other agents to be able to come in here and be able to present a proposal. Things change. Companies change. Everything has changed. And I hate to do this, but I'd really like to see you open the door up to do the interviews again.
Yeah.
I really think for us, it does. We shouldn't be closing the door on other new business or new opportunities to be able to do this. Personally, I'd like to see us open the door, select 1 or 2 or 3, and then do that process with them.
Well,
and I hate to do that, but
I understand how you
feel. I don't
feel.
want to close the door on all these other organizations that may be able to bring something new and innovative to us.
Well, I understand how you feel, and we will do whatever the board tells us to do. I think our feeling is that was 6 months ago.
Yeah.
It's not that long ago, and we brought in a group of human resources people from the community to work with Jen on this. They were the ones who did the interviews. They went through the process, and they had 2 recommendations. Their first recommendation was these were the top firms, and their second and that there was distance between these 2 and everybody else. And their second recommendation was, and this was a question the board asked, that they felt it was important that we have one agent of record as opposed to multiple agents.
yeah.
So, I understand how you feel, Commissioner, but I do believe 6 months ago was recent enough that to redo that whole process is going to be will cause us some timing problems. One last thing I want to point out about it, Jen didn't mention it, but Jen, I believe the other reason we're starting so early is because aren't there some new laws that come into place that we have to give notification to employees a certain time before the contracts, or before the year ends?
Yeah, and it's recently changed with healthcare reform, as a lot of those things are changing. We were supposed to give a 90-day notice. I believe it's down to 60-day notice now.
But before, we didn't have to give notice, and now we have to get it done.
So,
I agree with going forward. I just think that we need to open the door and do some interviews previous to be able to make sure these are the two still at the top of the list.
Sonny and then Jason.
I think the key point, and Dennis made it, is, we did this process 6 months ago, and the distance between number 2 and number 3 was huge in the scoring. It wasn't even close. If number 3 had been close, then I'd maybe consider looking at one of the others. But the distance was huge. So, I certainly agree with the idea. I still have questions whether or not, if we contract this person directly, if we're truly ever going to save any money from it. But maybe there's a chance that the insurance company will give us less money or give us a lower bid. I don't know. I have hard time believing that they're going to give us a lower price, because I truly believe that the agent costs are already built into their premium costs, and I don't believe they're going to discount that number for us, although they cut $500,000 off from our policy.
Yeah, I think they will.
For the life of me, I can't figure out how that happened when mine went up 20.4%.
I think here's how you got to look,
employees,
Commissioner, here's how you got to look at it. If they're not responsible to pay the agent anymore, and they give the agent 2% on our insurance premium, and they know that insurance company knows they're going to be bidding against 3 or 4 other insurance companies, they're going to cut that 2% profit right out of that number, I would think, or they're not going to be competitive.
Jason?
Couple things. First of all, you said the magic 3 words, healthcare reform. Are we spending money, spending resources? Are we rushing things along? Are we changing our schedule as a result of something that might well be declared unconstitutional in the near future?
not with this, no.
Okay.
No, absolutely not.
The other thing is, as a part of this, are we incentivizing for money saved? Have we set a baseline? I mean, you talk about outside of the box or taking risks. Can we incentivize for the savings? In other words, the more you save us, the more you make. If we set a baseline, what we're paying now, hey, can you save us a little more next year? And make it worth their while to even chase down those pennies. And in our case, a lot of pennies, can add up to, well, as we found last year, $500,000. So.
Well, I think that's kind of inherent in the process, Commissioner. I don't know, in each of these insurance areas, they're going to get not only our experience, but our past several years' premiums and costs. And of course, we will instruct them, we want to bring these in under budget if we can, and but beyond that, I don't know exactly how we could incentivize. I think one of the best ways, and maybe you don't want to do this, but I was assuming what we try to do with those insurances that we could, try to tie them up for 3 years. But you raise an interesting point. When we bring that bid spec back to you, we should have a discussion about that, because there may be, with some of the stuff that potentially is going on, it may not be wise to tie us up for 3 years, with a rate. You know what I mean? I just don't know that. Health insurance, nobody will tie, we won't tie anybody up. Yeah. It's a 1-year bid, that's all we're going to get.
Ross?
And Dennis, you're right, it was sort of a messy procedure, but as Sonny pointed out, we saved $500,000, which nobody thought was even possible. Right. Because of the uncertainty of things coming out of Lansing. Are we going to get a Michigan state law that says that all public employees have to pay 20% of their health insurance costs? If that happens, we're probably going to be offering different options. We'll have a high option, a low option, and so forth. Yeah. That all has to be negotiated in contracts. The idea of doing that for longer than a year seems pretty hopeless.
Well, but we won't, because we said health insurance, we're only going to bid it for 1 year.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I mean, because
Yeah.
addressing the question whether we should go longer or not. And the other thing is that I did get a call from Ron Crowfoot a couple weeks ago, who, of course, works for Priority. So even though Priority lost the contract, they're obviously still interested. So it's very, I'm hopeful that we're going to see.
I think we're going to see competition.
Sharp pencils out again this fall.
And I think there might be 1 or 2 additional companies that are starting to move into northern Michigan and northwest Michigan that may also be bidding. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see 3 or 4 bids in health insurance.
If I can say, I see the wisdom in what you're proposing. I don't like the idea of more than a 1 year at a time. I think it was at NACO, I met a commissioner from a different state. Something we might look into is self-insurance at some point. They had a county less than half the size of ours as far as employment, and they saved $100,000 a year doing it. So I just want to keep our options open going forward.
Well, as Jen said, in the health insurance, which is a $5 million a year cost, we're going to require both fully funded programs and self-funded programs. Right now, we self-fund workers' comp, we self-fund our property and our liability insurance, and that's what we want to do. We want to get both options for us to see if there's any savings by self-funding that program. That'll be a decision yours. Based on what you said, though, Commissioner, that's a good idea. Maybe on these other insurances, life, disability, maybe what we do is we tell them we want a 1-year firm bid with 2 years of options at our discretion. And then we can decide whether we want to exercise them or not. We'll get a little higher price as a result of that if we don't lock them in, but we'll get a lower price than if we just bid it every year, you know what I mean? So, there'll be a lot of options, and we will bring you back the specs for you to review to make sure you're comfortable with them. But this is the concept we're asking you to consider, and we just want to be able to move forward with developing the RFQ.
Or we'll get a bid with a 1-year multiplier and a 2nd-year multiplier.
That's possible, too.
Sure.
You're looking for a motion now just to move ahead?
It just authorizes us to use this process if you're willing.
So moved.
Whatever.
Dickie moved, I seconded.
All right.
He just talks slower than I do.
Not near as loud.
It's, everybody understand the motion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call?
Commissioner Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Lemko?
No.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Chairman Flees?
Yes. Motion passes.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Jen. Next items are esteemed treasurer, Mr. Rokas. Give us an update on delinquent taxes.
Bill Rokas, Grand Traverse County Treasurer. This is strictly just for information. Try to bring this every year to you. On March 1st of this year, 2011, the townships turned all their unpaid real delinquent taxes over to the county to collect. We've finalized that number now, and the total delinquent real property taxes this year was, as you can see in the schedule, $9,161,190, which is almost $1 million less than the year before. So we have, either because of the lower levy, this was the first year that we've seen a decrease in our total adjusted levy in a lot of years. I mean, part of it was that, but also you can see the delinquency rate went down from last year to this year. We are just below 6% delinquent taxes this year, so that's a good sign. And also, you'll notice that we have sufficient cash in the delinquent tax revolving fund this year to pay those units. Those checks went out today. So we sent out the $9 million today. The last 2 years, we've had to withhold the payment to the county. We didn't borrow the money, even though we were short a little bit. We just held back on the payment to ourselves for our share of the delinquent taxes. But that trend seems to have turned around this year, and I'm forecasting that the next couple of years, we should have sufficient cash in that fund as well. And that's in addition to when we were doing our budget for 2011, I think I presented to you that I thought we'd have excess cash in that fund of $438,000, which I included in my revolving fund budget to transfer out in 2011. And even if we make that transfer this year, I'm projecting that we'll still have excess of $400,000 by this time next year, as long as the delinquents come in similar to what they have this year, and I have no indication that they would not. So that's the good news. For fiscal year 2010, this revolving fund, because of the high delinquents for the past 3 years, we collected penalties and interest on those delinquent taxes of $1,839,000, which is in 1 year, which is the most that fund has ever collected. That trend will probably start to turn down now that our delinquent totals are turning down as well, but still a pretty significant number, and I'm projecting that number, although it will go down the next couple of years, still is going to be pretty high compared to what it's been in that fund over the years. So that's pretty much the report. We received a lot of cash and if you notice on this report, on December of 2010, we had $5,400,000 in cash. We